said, I've promised that we would have another fellow here talking and have Tim here with us. Tim, why don't you say hello to everybody?
Good evening, Victor.
Now, you've been divorced for quite some time.
About 10 years.
Your divorce happened when? Back in 80?
About 10 years ago.
89 or so.
Yeah, 89 or so.
Now, you have an interesting story. I'd like for you to listen to this. His story was, even though he was divorced in 1989, his ex-wife and he had an agreement. Well, Tim, why don't you tell us what that agreement was?
Well, she decided to remarry Victor, and the husband decided to adopt my daughter. And so, with adoption papers signed, they got a divorce, and she left town. And subsequently, all my parental rights were terminated. So here, just last year, I got papers in the mail from Support Enforcement wanting to restart my child support. So administrative law judge set my child support at $300 a month. And
now, wait a minute. Wait, suppose I said, wait, Tim. In the meantime, if your child support is set at $300 a month and you didn't know all this was going on, you had no idea, you hadn't seen your daughter for a while.
it's about 5-6 years.
And so mother pops back into your life and says you owe money.
Yeah, they're in North Carolina right now.
And wow, that's got to be a shocker.
Yeah, no visitation, just pay the $300 a month. They came into town for the court date, and I did get to see her for a couple hours. But other than that, she's gone. I'm trying to get Christmas visitation, but her attorney wrote up the paperwork where it's every other year. And I haven't seen my daughter in over 5-6 years now.
Now, one of the things I happen to know, because I've talked with you, is that you were given a child support order that technically you can't handle.
No, I'm self-employed, and I got provided my profit and loss statements to the judge, and they didn't accept them because my accountant wasn't in the courtroom.
And then when you asked for your accountant to show up later on, they didn't want to go through it again, right?
Well, it was dismissed. My child support was set at $300 a month, and visitation twice a year, and so I'm trying for an appeal right now, and the appeal process is time-consuming. I called Support Enforcement the other day. They sent me a letter asking me for a full payment of my back child support, and so I did call them back, and I tried to explain to them I'm going through the appeal process, and if they could hold off on taking my checking account or whatever they do to get the money.
They probably didn't want to hear that.
Yeah.
And yeah, you got to watch those. Now, after going through what you've been through, what have I not asked, and or what would you like to share with a guy out there that may be going through the system now? What would you tell a guy that's probably an innocent babe in the woods?
Well, persistence, and don't give up, that's for sure, because Victor here at DADS is a great inspiration and helps a lot of people.
Now, you're doing your own appeal, right? You're taking your
Yes.
stuff to the Court of Appeals.
Yes.
And nobody's helping you do that. You're doing that on your own.
That is correct.
Okay. I'm going to wish you a lot of luck.
Thank you.
As I wish James Brown a lot of luck also.
Right.
And those of you out there watching, these are two guys that you can ask questions of. They're going down a path that maybe you haven't been down yet, and you may go down in the future. Or if you have gone down this path, maybe you have some advice. So this is an opportunity to exchange and share information. Tim has been divorced for 10 years, found out that the child he thought was adopted was not adopted out. Mother comes back into town and says, pay up, pay child support, and that's a shocker. He asks to see his kid, and he gets kind of a rough treatment there. He does get a chance to see his kid just prior to court.
Yeah, she's 13 now.
And I would say that this is a very unusual case. You may want to check with him yourself. Now, James Brown, who was on here just earlier, is going through this for the first time. He has been raising his kids. but yet now he's shunned. He's kind of out in the cold. He hasn't seen his kids for a while. And it's an interesting story that both of them have to tell. Our number here is 288-4442. That's 288-4442 if you want to call in and ask a question or two. We're going to continue going on with the program, and maybe if there's some more to add to these stories, we'll get Tim back up here and Mr. Brown back here and let them add more to what they've had to say. Now, these guys do the best they can in their family life and with their kids. I've seen them work very hard at this. I've seen them become totally confused with what's going on in the legal arena when it comes to the issues of divorce or child support, custody, and visitation. And I think that society needs to provide them with some sort of crisis line, some sort of informational service where it's easy to get a hold of. Right now it's very difficult. These guys are left out in the cold. And I can understand how there are some guys that just simply lose their cool under this kind of pressure. Most of them don't, and that's the miracle of it all. Most of them are tame. Most of them don't lose their cool. My curiosity is, why don't more of them lose their cool and do a lot of social damage? I'm shocked and surprised, pleasantly so, that they are actually civilized after this is all over, because it's enough to drive anyone temporarily nuts. In the meantime, we have women's rights groups that think they have a right to determine life and death on the abortion issue. Guys have nothing to say there. And sometimes I run into fathers. Now, I don't want to be put in one corner of preaching abortion or life, but I can tell you that fathers not being considered on that have some points of view. And one of the problems is that we don't consider these guys when it comes to the abortion issue. I've had guys talk to me who didn't want to be a father, and they cry because they didn't want to be a father, they're not ready, and she says, "You're going to be a father." And I have guys on the other side that want to be a father, and she says, "You're not going to be a father." She aborts. And so we do have some problems here in our social arena that really need to have a second look, and they need to be addressed. I think we've given too much of the decision-making and the power to one side of this equation, and we need to balance it up. Let's take that phone call that's been waiting. Hello, caller. Welcome to the DADS Television Network.
Hi. I have a question. I have an 11-year-old son, and been currently with my significant other for 95% of the time. But despite of that, I have a court order, and I'm working 2 jobs and being garnished in both of those jobs. What can you tell me about that?
I don't know that I have a solution for that. I hear this every once in a while, and this is something that the public needs to know. Some guys who have 2 jobs, the Support Enforcement Agency will hit both employers with a wage withholding and garnishment. And if you have a $500 child support obligation, the employer is obligated, both employers are obligated to the full amount of the child support obligation. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then guys ask me, and you're not the first, and I don't have a good answer for this. I'm sorry, I've heard this one before. But they ask me, what can you do when Support Enforcement sends out a bill the same size to 2 employers? It appears to me, and maybe you can help me with this, that if they send out a bill the same size to 2 employers, that they will get overpaid, and you will, if you're behind, you will catch up faster, and if you are current, you will go ahead. You'll be ahead of the game, and then they won't want money the next time. Does it work that way?
Well, I think my question is, being that me and my significant other have been together and are together, and why am I still being garnished?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I didn't pick that up. Let me ask a question on that. The significant other, has the significant other been on welfare?
Probably during delivery, and that's it.
Is the significant other now off of welfare?
For years, yes.
is there an arrearage amount that you owe the state of Oregon?
There is a rearage, but I should be current on that.
Okay. Here's what you can do, you and your significant other, more your significant other than you.
Right.
She needs to send a letter to the Office of Support Enforcement with her signature requesting that collection services be terminated.
Mm-hmm.
And they will terminate any further collections. You're not obligated to continue paying if she doesn't want the money. And so what support enforcement hasn't told either one of you, that if she's not being served by state services in any way, furthermore, if you don't, or if neither one of you owe the state any money for any services, you have a private contract deal.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not required, she's not required, to have the state of Oregon provide collection services for a private deal.
Okay.
Let me give you a contrast here. People who get divorced and the mother never touches public services like welfare, food stamps, Section 8 housing, and Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that she's a middle income or upper income wife.
Mm-hmm.
Those two people are allowed to make private child support arrangements between them.
Excellent.
And they can, the woman can say, look, I will take it directly from him into my bank account, or she can say, I don't want anything at all, I want zero from him, and they sign a deal
Mm-hmm.
that makes it so. That's called a stipulation.
Mm-hmm.
If it's written up and stipulated, what a stipulation is, an agreement, it says right on the top of it, stipulation, and both parties sign it, and you pass it by a judge for a judge to review and the judge to get on it too.
Mm-hmm.
That stipulated order will hold water.
Great.
The only time you can't stipulate on child support, the only time you cannot stipulate on child support is when the state has been involved and the state is continuing to be owed money. That is, there's an arrearage.
Mm-hmm.
So if she were to run up $1,000 worth of welfare debt, until that $1,000 is paid off, she cannot agree to zero support from you because the state is owed money.
Because the state is involved.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can, either one of you can call the state and ask what your balance is.
Mm-hmm.
And once you ask, now just because you have a balance in the arrears, that does not mean that all of that arrearage is the state's. It could be hers.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that the state says that you owe them $1,000 past due. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next question is, how much of that $1,000 is her money?
Right.
And how much of that $1,000 past due is state
It's going
money?
to the state. Right.
Now, once you find out that figure, and it could be any kind of ratio, it could be 50-50, it could be 60-40, it could be 35-65, it could be 70-30,
Mm-hmm.
it could be any ratio. But once you find out what it is that the state needs, then you can make an arrangement and say, well, okay, I have $1,000 past due, and of that $1,000, $400 is state money. Here's your $400. You write them a check for $400 and pay them off. So, okay, state, you're out of it.
Right.
Then you and mother can look eyeball to eyeball and say, well, honey, or whatever you're calling her these days, let's take care of it this way. Now, she has to actually notify them to get out of her life. If
Right.
you don't do that, they won't do that. They have an incentive to keep the two of you on their books.
Right.
Their incentive is federal. They get tax dollars to keep you on the books. They have several formulas by which those clerks and that office is repaid from the federal government.
Right.
There's a formula that says they're repaid by the head, so the
it's
more
their,
heads
it's
they
to their
collect.
advantage to keep us on the books.
Huh?
It's to their advantage.
Yes. This is the mentality of a socialist state. And all of these agencies have a socialist mentality. They call themselves serving the public, but they're enslaving you. That's,
Absolutely.
yeah, so that's their term. They call themselves, and what many people do, what the conservatives say, the conservatives like Republicans, we have had enough government, we don't want any more government. The problem is not enough people realize what they're saying, and it doesn't kind of ring in their ears right. And so we have the liberals that say, we want more services and we want more government. Well, where do you think the the money's coming from for more government and more services. It's coming out of your pocket.
Absolutely.
And so what they do is wind up enslaving the lower class. They're not going to enslave the upper class. That's not going to happen.